6 albums into 15. You know what that means, guys. We're actually officially more than a third of the way done with Up the Irons Week. Let me tell you, this has been a lot of fun for me. Revisiting one of my favorite bands of all time, something that's not represented very well by Last.fm, mainly because, well, somewhere along the lines, whenever you get into that whole feeling that you really need to explore all the different things that you have, and if you keep acquiring stuff, you just keep doing it, makes going back to these classics a hard thing to do unless you really, really give yourself a reason. And what better reason to revisit the entire Maiden catalog than the fact that the Final Frontier release is only a few short days away, guys. So, album number 6 for Iron Maiden was, once again, more evolution. I love the fact that Iron Maiden is a band that constantly evolved, even though in the 1980s their classic sound, quote-unquote, it really seems to be apparent on each and every album, each and every year. 6 years, 6 albums. 6th one, Somewhere in Time. It would almost seem as though they perhaps wasted Number of the Beast as album number 3. Perhaps they could have called album number 6, 666, the Number of the Beast. But it's metal history, and just fine the way it is. Somewhere in Time is basically as close as you can get to being a conceptual album without it actually being a conceptual album. Title right there, Somewhere in Time, actually suggests exactly what the concept is going to be: time travel. This is something that it's always kind of been a savage little interest that this band seems to really have. And it's apparent in the fact that they're able to reference a lot of old school literature, old school movies, and old school television shows that aired on the BBC, which was the case with the song The Prisoner, which is something that's actually becoming re-released and re-available in the States for all of those people who have never seen the show. In fact, the opening sequence from The Prisoner is actually right from the show. If you didn't know that, check out the show. I plan to, because from what I saw, it seems pretty good. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Somewhere in Time. Now, this is an album that's still not quite at that point where they're getting to the really long and lengthy albums where they're going to be boosted over 55, 60, 65, 70 minutes like you're seeing today. Because you have to remember, we're still doing these on the old school original format CDs where, you know, it's kind of a new thing, but a lot of times most of these releases are still based on cassette tapes that only have a limited playback time. So, we're getting there. Trust me, we're getting there. Once we dive into that, it actually gets a little worse instead of better. But then again, I'm giving away the ending, which is not cool. Now, this particular album gave birth to a couple of singles as well, but they're kind of strange in the catalog of singles. Wasted Years and Heaven Can Wait are both... They almost sound like they fit the time frame. It almost like that Iron Maiden was ahead of its time, ahead of those 80s, you know, ballad-driven power metal slash hair metal rockers where they could just make these powerful and passionate songs, but yet instead of doing the cliched element of it, everything being about love and love lost and every rose has its thorn, they're going to fit the theme. You know, saying that heaven can wait because they can instead travel backwards, relive, revisit. Very cool stuff. Now, what's also cool about Somewhere in Time is that you have some very interesting elements. For one, the first track, Caught Somewhere in Time, fully shows the direction and theme of this particular album. Really does it right off the bat. And this is something that may not be apparent to a lot of fans unless they really sit and study it a little bit. It's kind of a fun little riddle. It's kind of cool. And it should really make sense by the time you make it to track number 8, Alexander the Great. Especially if you pop these albums, and especially this particular one, into your CD player, your MP3 player on your computer or whatever, and you actually take a look at the title track itself, because it isn't just Alexander the Great as it is written here on the back of the CD. It's actually Alexander the Great 356 to 323 BC, which means that they have now gone successfully all the way back in time before Christ, which is pretty cool. They're going all the way back, skipping over that particular period of time that seems so beleaguered and so oftentimes belied due to people that have that religious kind of qualm or that religious argument. And they go right back to a time that's much more interesting and much more unknown. Overall, this album it shows even more exploration, as something that I said as part of the introduction. And the reason why is because you can kind of see where the music's starting to go a little bit. They're starting to broaden their horizons a little more. Something that you saw in Power Slave, in the fact that thematic element seemed to be really apparent just in the music, whether it be in just subtle nuances, or just the feeling that you got if you were reading along with the lyrics, looking in the book, and listening to the music, kind of transporting you to another state of mind, another place, another time. Wow! It's exactly kind of what you get here. And the cool thing about this, actually, is the fact not only that you see, your trademark Eddie right here, but in the back here you actually see a little animated Iron Maiden right there with Brucey Bruce in the middle and everything like that. And what's that in the background? Holy crap, it's a pyramid. What was evident in the last one? Pyramid. It means that they're actually leaving the Power Slave element, going into this time travel elements, progression. Now, the progression came full circle with the next album, Seventh Son of the Seventh Son, where they actually employed something more than just guitar synthesizers. They actually used actual keyboards. However, you could definitely tell that this was going to be a direction that was going to be explored, because this is an album that definitely has that feeling where something more needed to be added, something more was added, because something more was added. Man, that's redundant, isn't it? It's really annoying. Cool part about Somewhere in Time is that it's another one of these albums that I love because of its unique feel, not to mention its unique idea. As I said, it's something that is as close to a concept album that you can get without it actually being one. And whenever you really blur the edge like that, you get what's known as the quandary of the ages. Is it a concept album? Is it not a concept album? It's a really, really cool argument that is only made about some of the best albums in history. Somewhere in Time, definitely up there. The other one that comes to mind is Still Life by Open. So, actually, as part of your homework assignment, besides watching this review and continuing to watch Up the Irons Week, I want you to debate. Complete concept album, partially concept album, not a concept album at all. Anybody that writes that's retarded, let me know.